Hello and welcome to this AQA GCSE drama revision video. In this video we will be looking at section A of the written examination, which is the theatre roles and terminology section. This section comprises 4 questions and each of those questions carry 1 mark. The questions will be easy and they're considered settling questions. They're questions just for you to settle into the examination. Hopefully it should be really easy to revise and it should be a really quick part of the examination. The first thing you'll need to be familiar with is stage positioning. Now, when we think of stage positioning, we have to think of 9 different areas on the stage. And we have positions on stage because it helps us in rehearsals, it helps a director to place actors, but also it's good to think about where set will be placed on stage. So first of all, we have the concept of upstage and downstage. So upstage is the back part of the stage, and downstage is the closest part to the audience. Between upstage and downstage, you have centre stage. A way that I remember my upstage and downstage is that most stages tend to be on a bit of a rake, so they tend to be going down forwards as you get closer to the audience. So upstage tends to be higher and downstage, as you move towards the audience, is lower. You then have the idea of stage right and stage left. Now it's really important to remember that these positions are always from the perspective of the actor. So you've got to imagine yourself standing on stage and think about where you are in relation to the audience. So if you're standing on centre stage, then stage right is the right for the actor, stage left is the left for the actor. Remember, these positions are for the performers, they're for the people who are making the show. It doesn't benefit the audience in any way, so they have to make sense to the actor. So that's just one way to think about stage right and stage left. You've then got upstage right and upstage left, which is obvious, so it's towards the back on the right and the left. And you've got downstage right and downstage left, so again it's at the front of the stage on the right and the left. So as you're currently looking at this diagram, this wonderful stage in a box here, you can see we have this kind of podium with these steps leading up to it, and we've got these 2 stick figures on top of that. And they are currently centre stage right, so they're in the middle, in the centre of the stage, and they're on the right hand side of the stage. So I want you to have a look at this photograph I took of Jane Eyre. This was the tour, and this is at the Birmingham Rep Theatre, I believe. So if you have a look at the ramp on the stage, so if you can see a ramp going up, see if you can work out the position that the ramp is on stage. Okay, so I'd describe that as centre stage right. As you can see, it's not quite at the front, but it's not quite at the back, so it's in the centre. And if you were an actor standing on stage, it's the right hand side of the stage. Here's another image taken from The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. This is the opening preset set design. If you look very closely, you can see a dead dog on the stage. Where is the dead dog? Hopefully you've worked out, if you've got a good view there, that the dog is centre stage. Now have a look at the orange chair, or the red chair. I think it's an orange chair. Can you work out where the orange chair is on stage? So again, I describe the orange chair as being centre stage right. So it's on the right hand side of the stage. Again, it's the perspective of the actor on stage. Here's a final image. This is an image of the Play That Goes Wrong set. Let's have a look for the grandfather clock. Can anyone work out where the grandfather clock is on stage? What's its position? So I would call that upstage centre. So it's at the back of the stage, right in the centre. So you need to get quite familiar with your stage positions. There's only 9 to learn. And you'll get a question, so you'll probably see a diagram with different set pieces on that diagram, and you may be asked to state where a particular piece of set is in relation to the stage as a whole. The next thing you need to learn is the different types of staging configurations. There's 6 that you need to learn for your GCSE in drama. And I've got some diagrams and some photographs of different staging configurations, and we'll talk through them now. So the first image we've got here, as you look at the screen on the left hand side, is what we'd call a proscenium arch. So if you look closely, you can see almost like a frame framing the theatre, and we call this a proscenium arch. That is the name of the arch going around the stage, the proscenium. And this is kind of the most common type of theatre that you'd get in the UK. So if you go to the theatre, this is usually what you would see. A lot of Victorian theatres tend to have this configuration. Next photograph, you can see the audience are sat all around the stage. And we describe that as theatre in the round. So it's really important if you're an actor performing in a piece and it's in theatre in the round configuration, that you have to be thinking about the audience being all around you. So you're going to be having to change your position frequently so everyone in the audience is engaged with the action on stage. We've then got another image on the left hand side, and if you look, the audience are sat on either side of the stage. It looks kind of like a catwalk. This is described as traverse. So it's probably slightly easier as an actor to play this space than it is a theatre in the round space, but still you've got to be thinking about the audience being on both sides. So that will affect the way that you set out action on stage. Next to the traverse image, we've then got the audience sat on 3 sides of the stage. This is called a thrust stage. That picture there is taken from the Swan Theatre in Stratford-upon-Avon, part of the Royal Shakespeare Company theatres. So as you can see, the audience are sat on 3 sides and the stage kind of thrusts into the audience. Next, we've got this image on the left hand side, and it's not really a stage at all, as you can see. There's just the audience standing around the actors watching what's happening. And we describe this as promenade theatre. So the audience are standing up, they may be walking around a building, or as you can see in the image, outside, and they're kind of going with the actors. We describe this as promenade staging. And the final kind of staging that we need to think about is called end-on. So it's basically really simple, where the audience are in one side of the space and the performers are in another. And this is perhaps the staging that you're used to performing in a drama studio or in a small sort of black box studio, as we've got in the image here. And so the performers are end-on. The final thing that you'll need to be familiar with is the roles and responsibilities of contemporary theatre makers. As I'm sure you are aware, there are hundreds of different roles, types of people that work in the theatre, but you just need to know the roles and responsibilities of 12 people that work in the theatre for your GCSE in drama. So we're going to go through them now, some of them in more detail than others. So first of all, we have a playwright. Dead simple, the playwright is the name given to the person who writes a play. So William Shakespeare, for example, is a playwright. You've then got the performer, so that's anyone who realises a role on stage. So the actor who plays the character, or the dancer, the circus performer, the person who's actually performing. You've then got the understudy. Now, the understudy, it's their role to take the place of the performer when they cannot do a show, whether they're off or whether they're ill or whatever. So they have to learn the actor's role, and then they have to play the actor's role when the actor is unable to do so. That's the understudy. Next, you've got the lighting designer. Does what it says on the tin. They design the lights for the show. And as part of their role, they have to create a lighting plot, which is the lighting states that you see throughout the show, and the cues. And the cues are just a kind of a list of all the different lighting states that then move throughout the show. So as the show progresses, they move from one cue into the next. You've got the sound designer, similar to the lighting designer, but obviously they're looking at sound. They're responsible for anything that you hear that's not produced by the performer. So that might be specific music. Sometimes you might have a composer, or if it's a musical, then obviously that's done differently, but within a play, the sound designer will be thinking about the sound of the show, so sound effects, anything that you hear, and again they'll come up with a list of cues, that a list of sounds that are used throughout the show that then can be operated by a technician. Set designer, so the set designer works to create the set. So again, the set is the staging, the things that you're seeing on stage. Set designer works closely with the costume designer. A lot of the time, in fact, the set designer also designs the costume, but the set designer will work closely with the lighting designer to ensure that they create a nice coherent show. And also, obviously, they'll work very closely with the director, because it's the designer's role, be it the set designer, costume designer, sound designer, it's their role to ensure that they are delivering the director's vision. So they've got a really important job. Costume designer designs the costumes for the production. The costume department within a theatre is called the wardrobe. Then you've got a puppet designer. So again, very, very, very clear what the puppet designer does. They design puppets, believe it or not. Then we've got this term technician, and we're using this as kind of an all-encompassing term for anyone who does any sort of technical work for a show, whether that's before the show in terms of rigging or setting up, or anyone who's operating technical equipment during the show. So whether they're operating lighting, or whether they're operating sound, or they are operating machinery that allows scenery to move on and off stage, or flying or trucking or whatever. So the technicians are working on all aspects of the show, and big sort of West End shows or Broadway shows tend to use, a large team of technicians. Again, a smaller show may only use one technician, or they may not use a technician at all. So it very much depends on the demands of the production and what it requires. You've then got the director, who really leads the artistic element of the production. They obviously work very closely with the performers, the actors, and they're kind of very much responsible for the overall concept of the show, and how the show is going to look, how the show is going to feel, how the show works. So the director is really the person who brings all the various elements together. So they'll work with all the design team, they'll work with the performers, they'll work with the producer who's funding the show, and they'll ensure that, again, as I've said previously, it's a really coherent product, what the audience gets to see. The next role we want to think about is the stage manager. Now, in the professional theatre, you have a stage management team a lot of the time. So you'll have a stage manager, a deputy stage manager, a team of assistant stage managers. But for your exam, we're just thinking about a stage manager. The stage manager is responsible for things that are going on backstage. So they'll oversee what's happening backstage during the production. Stage managers often solving problems and making sure that the technical team and technicians know what they're doing. They're also often heavily involved in props and making sure that things are where they need to be so actors can grab things. Often they're looking after all aspects of the stage backstage. Also, we're thinking about the stage manager as being in charge of the rehearsal process throughout the piece to make sure that everything, is organised and everything happens when it needs to happen. So the stage manager is really important, and they work very closely with the director. And then we have the theatre manager. Now, a lot of people tend to get the stage manager and the theatre manager mixed up when they're doing their exam. The theatre manager, it coordinates the front of house team. So they look after the audience, box office staff, ushers, anyone that you will meet when you go to the theatre to watch a piece. That's the theatre manager. So let's just think stage manager, backstage, actors, technical team, people that are putting the show on, theatre manager, the audience, people that you will meet when you go to the theatre. So hopefully that's been helpful to you. As I said previously, it's a really short part of the exam, really easy to get 4 marks out of 4 marks. It's just a case of learning this knowledge and ensuring that you're really clear with it when you do the exam. Good luck.